All right, I got a couple of paddles to review today. I got the new SLK Selkirk Era Power 1124 Alpha Vapor Power, as well as Pegasus as well. So let's just start off with the Era Power. I'm not in my usual studio, but since I'm traveling, but I got the Era Power. I was going to compare it to the Vanguard Power Air. And just give a kind of a difference there. So I think hands down the Era Power takes it in pretty much all categories. Uh, yeah, aside from maybe the color scheme, I think the Power Air has a lot of varieties in different colors that it has compared to the Era Power. It comes in the white as well as kind of a cyan blue. But pretty much, I mean, how long did it take for us to get to an awesome like power paddle from Selkirk? I know they came with the 007, but that was a Labs paddle, and it was great spin, cool Infinigrit technology, but it still felt a little bit too poppy and too hard to control as a power paddle. So the Era Power has been great. I mean, it's moved on from spray grit. It's even cheaper than price than the Power Air. But then I'll talk about kind of the differences between the SLK versus the Selkirk lineup in terms of their warranty. But pretty much bigger sweet spot, more forgiving. Power Air might have a little bit more pop on it, but I think there's a reason why all the pros have switched over to the Era Power because just overall playability of this paddle has been awesome, right? As an edge guard, which I think adds a little bit to the stability as well. And I think one thing that Selkirk did with the SLK lineup here was they finally fixed the naming convention of their paddles, right? They went with the standard wide body and elongated. Much easier to understand. What am I getting from a paddle? Is it long? Is it short and wide? And so they fixed that as opposed to going with the Invicta, like Epic S2. What does that mean, right? And so I got the wide body here, also tested out the elongated as well. But pretty much this wins hands down with against the Power Air. So it's different from the 008 because the 008 is a foam core paddle. The Era Power is a Gen 3 paddle similar to like a Joola, as well as kind of the new 11six24s as well. So they got a kind of like the what call it a dynamic core or something like that. And so I think those are all the pros. There's a couple cons I would say with the new Era Power paddle. One is their paint grit up here I think is oddly smooth. So because they did like the full like color, like you got the nice grit here and then it comes up here and then it's like smooth. I mean, perhaps you're not really hitting many balls up here or even here on the logo, but if you do, you kind of lose a little bit of the grit there. Unless you're like a pro who actually intentionally tries to hit up here and like slow the ball down. I don't know why they didn't just like tone it down with the paint there. So that was kind of one of the cons. The other cons I mentioned was this is part of their SLK lineup. So that means rather than having Selkirk's lifetime warranty, it has a 1 year warranty, which I think is actually okay, given that you're probably going to move on paddles before then anyways, and probably the grit surface is going to wear down. So that's kind of the main difference between the Selkirk lineup, like the Power Air, and the SLK lineup is the 1 year warranty. But on the plus side, that actually does reduce the cost a lot on the Era Power paddle. It's rather than being like a $250, $280 paddle, it comes in at only $200, right? So does the Power Air win on anything? Aside from the color scheme, maybe the air hole, if people like that. Maybe you can swing a little bit faster, but overall, I think this is pretty much a better paddle all around than the Power Air, right? And so let's go on with the comparisons of that with. So I know some people have been saying that, oh, the Era Power is just a clone of the Vapor Power. And while I think, yeah, people are on something where it's like it's a very similar paddle, I think it is quite different. So saying like, oh, the Vapor Power is like a Joola like 4 Pro. Like, I don't think that's the case, right? I think there are stark differences between them as well. And so I'll just start off with, well, what is the difference between the paddles? For one, I mean, the similarities is they're all Gen 3 like 16 millimeter cores, right? So that's the same. But if I put them side to side in terms of a height comparison, it's a little bit different. So on this side, we have the shortest is the Pegasus, followed by the Era, followed by the Vapor Power. So the height profiles on these are a bit different. So the Pegasus is basically the shortest and fattest, because it has a taper. It's not always like the widest. And then you have the Vapor Power. So then let me show. So here's kind of side by side profile view. The handle of the Era Power is longer. So I think it's a 5.6 as opposed to a 5.5. And then their elongated is even longer than that. I think it's 5.75. So which is longer than the Vapor Power. And so the Vapor has a longer face. The Pegasus has a slightly shorter face just because of the taper. But if you're kind of like comparing heights and profiles, like it's kind of like wedged in between the 11six24s, the wide body, and then the elongated. And I think they have the Hirachi, I think is the biggest, the longest one for 11six24. So that's kind of at least the differences between the sizing. And so the sizing of that, the Era Power ends up being actually it has the lowest swing weight of all of them, even though this one's slightly shorter. The swing weight of the Era Power is actually 109. I think this comes in a little bit higher than that. I think like 110 to 112. And then the Vapor comes in, like I think it's like 114, 15, somewhere around there. And then so the Era Power felt to me like it was the most stable of all the paddles. And what's it gonna say? So this is most stable, and then the what is it? The swing weight, oh, the twist weight. So this one ended up having a higher twist weight than the Pegasus, even though this ends up being a shorter paddle. So that was kind of interesting there, that there was a slightly different profile. So the way that the SLK Era Power plays is a little bit different from the 11six24. So the feel of them when it hits is quite different. So the 11six24 it felt like a very like hollow, thin feel when it hit the face, and so it felt like, yeah. So it's hitting it is kind of softer, a little bit more all court feeling, and then the Era Power felt a little bit more like a Joola Scorpeus. So this is the wide body. It felt like the Scorpeus, and so it was more of a more like solid feel. So the Vapor Alphas. So I mean, one thing that they did change with the Vapor Alphas compared to the standard Vapor Power is that it's a little bit toned down in its poppiness. So it's not as poppy as the original Vapor Power, but it still felt like it was kind of that thinner, hollow feel as opposed to kind of like the solid, like thicker feeling of the Era Power as well as the Joola. So the Era Power, it's not quite as much power as the Joola, but is up there, and I felt like the feel was a little bit better there. So kind of comparing the paddles, if you're going with the Joola Scorpeus, that's like 280. The Era Power is at like 200. The 11six24s are also 200. I mean, with the Joolas, you have a 1-year warranty. You have a 1-year warranty on the SLKs. You have a 6-month warranty. So both of these are $200. You get a double the warranty here if you happen to core crush or something else. So, I mean, kind of similar paddles, more warranty. This one's a little bit more all court feeling in my opinion. but definitely all solid paddles. Been testing them out. Shout out to Noah and Michael, who I was hitting with today and testing out some of these paddles. So yeah, if you want to get your hands on some of them SLKs, they are launching on the 24th. So get your hands on them. Check out my bio for some discount codes and let me know what you think. I should get the elongated. I have it. I just wasn't able to pull it out, but very solid paddles. Pretty excited about the new lineups that they have. So cool. See you guys next time.